said before, this is one of the committees in the House that we influence people that can really influence people, and so it's great to see the attention on that. You have on your agenda this afternoon the items that we'd clear. I'd like to take a bit of chair's privilege as we get into it. The first item is recognize some folks from the University of Georgia for a brief introduction. Other than that, we'll stick with the agenda as it. If there's no objections, we'll use this agenda and we'll carry on. No objections to that, we'll go forward. So the first thing I'm going to do is recognize some folks, and I don't know by names who I'm doing it, but these are folks with the IPSI program. If y'all remember last year, I believe Houston Gaines had the original bill. I think the language actually passed, and I don't know if Representative Gaines is here with us today or not, but I think his language, because of some confusion over in the Senate, may have gone on a different bill number, but we remember it here in the House. And we just have some folks that I want you to meet. I had an opportunity to spend some time with them today, and quite frankly, it made my morning to hear the stories they have and the impact they make on their school community. So I wanted to give them the opportunity to talk to us for just a second so that you too could share the positive vibes I felt this morning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce those that are with you, and thank you for being here.
Great. Well, my name is Alexis Selwak, and I'm here with the Destination Dogs program at UGA for the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities Advocacy Day. And we just really wanted to thank you for funding and supporting all IPSC programs across the state of Georgia. And I'll let each student introduce themselves, and then Ben will end us off on a positive note.
I'm Julia Nazarowski.
I'm Peyton Ashcraft.
I'm Ben Harrison, and I would like to thank all of you for supporting the IPSC programs like the Destination Dogs, and for the funding that gives us the opportunity to go to college, go Dogs, and get a job that we want. Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you for being here. I want to also, as we get going, recognize we have a unit president from our university system from Savannah State University, Dr. Cynthia Alexander. I saw you earlier in the room. There you are. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Yes, ma'am. Had an opportunity to visit with her this morning, and I hope all of you get a chance to say hello as we finish up this afternoon. So thank you very much. I'm going to go now down the agenda. I'm going to call HB 985. My name is on the top of the bill. I think Representative Gamble's maybe second on the bill, but I'm going to ask President Lynn Riley to present the proposition. And while President Riley comes, I'd like to set the stage. If the committee remembers House Bill 319 last year, this is to sunset and dissolve, I guess dissolve would be the best word, a portion of a corporation within Georgia Student Finance that is no longer needed. We passed it. It passed the House. I don't think there was any question about it. What you have before you today is that same function. We can ask our attorney, Michael Walker. There may be a word or two different, so if you compare line number to line number, but I think the attorney can assure us that it does what we were doing last year, no more, no less. And I would, after President Riley's presentation, if the committee would, without objection, I'd like us to consider moving that today, just so that it get caught up in a little. I will use my terms. Not theirs, but a little foolishness, late into the session last year where it became the vehicle for something. So this is something that really needs to be done. President Riley can tell us, but I think it returns several $1 million back into the state that can be used for purposes of education. So the faster we can move it, the better. So if everyone's comfortable with that, I would ask unanimous consent that we can move it here on our first hearing. With that, President Riley.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me to speak
on House Bill 985 today. Mr. Chairman has really encapsulated the content of this bill. You all heard this bill last year under the number House Bill 319. Michael Walker, Legislative Counsel, has made some perfections to some of the language in the bill in places where we were striking it from different sections of the code other than in Title 20 where it actually was created and resides. The votes last year were unanimous in this committee, in the House, and in the Senate. As Chairman mentioned, additions that were made to the bill caused the governor to veto the bill shortly after Usani died. We would very much like to have this bill approved in this session with a effective date of June 30, 2024. This would allow it to be the last year where we have to prepare audits and financial statements. And as the corporation no longer has a purpose due to the retirement of the portfolios and the programs that were administered by the corporation, there is no reason for us to continue to have to do the accounting, the auditing, and the record keeping for the corporation. And as Chairman also mentioned, we have about $28 million in reserves in the corporation that could be released to the Student Finance Authority and by the direction of the Governor and the General Assembly utilized for other higher education program purposes. I'm happy to answer any additional questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this bill considered today.
Thank you, President Riley. The committee have any questions? Any questions for the committee? I don't know that we put a sign-up sheet out there, but yeah, that's fine. We're all friends here. If anybody would like to speak to this item, we have HB 985. That's LC 491637. Anyone wish to opine on? I have a question from number 18. Is that yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Riley, always good to see you. Certainly happy to ensure we get some good bipartisan, quick movement on this. Just one question. In terms of the $28 million that would be allocated or sent to the Georgia Student Finance Commission, would that just be going into your general fund, or is that appropriated for a specific purpose?
Thank you for the question. The funds would transfer over to the Georgia Student Finance Authority, and they would be held in a separate reserve pending direction from the Governor and the General Assembly for purposes. The Student Finance Authority would not have the latitude to utilize them without direction.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I will ask a question. After the funds are transferred over, will the institutions be able to apply to get some of that money?
Thank you for the question. That, again, would be a determination based on legislative direction or executive direction.
But we will be able to make recommendations to help out in this situation.
I'm certain that the recommendations would be well received.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam President, for condensing 24 pages into about 90 seconds, and you did a great job. I actually have a bill in Ways and Means I'd love for you to present for me. But Mr. Chair, at the appropriate time, I'd like to call for motion whenever that is.
We're getting there. Yeah, are there any further questions? I'm going to assume that anybody that had a chance, wish to address it out in the audience, has been given that chance and just wait. So we're good there. Are there further questions before the meeting? If not, we're in a posture that Chair would accept a motion on LC 491637. This is House Bill 985. I have a motion and a second that this item move on to rules with a due pass recommendation. Is there any discussion? Discussion on the motion? Motion is due pass on LC 491637. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. It moves forward. Thank you very much, President Riley. We may get you a full-time job presenting legislation before this and other. They tell me there's an opening down in Judiciary for quick presenters. Yes, Representative Stinson, did you have thought or a question you wanted to share with us?
A quick comment, Mr. Chairman. I just want to personally thank the new president of Savannah State University for being here on today. Your university have always been represented during our meetings, but I'm extremely proud to have the actual president of the university in the audience, so thank you.
Yes, we're moving on to the agenda this afternoon. Chairman Dick, since you're going to be with us on the committee, do you mind if we reverse the idea? I think Representative the Governor's floor leader may have to go another place since you're going to be with us. So we're going to flip those in the agenda. 982, Representative Matt Gamble wants to tell us about the State Workforce Development Board and some things we're going to do to get Georgians back to work a little faster.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's good to be with you today, and I have another piece of legislation for you to consider today from our governor as a part of his legislative package, House Bill 982, which is before you. And let me start by saying y'all will remember that the High Demand Career Initiative was an initiative of Governor Deal. It's been a great success. It really helps a lot of students in our state get the education they need to go into these high demand careers. And so just on the outset, this legislation will build off of the success of this program and help to improve, what has generally been successful already. So this legislation will empower the State Workforce Development Board to, in partnership with employers and current labor data and trends, identify, create, and maintain a list of high-demand careers along with the skills and certifications needed for employment in those areas. This high-demand career list will then inform all of our state and local education agencies to focus education and career pathways into filling those high-demand jobs. The State Workforce Investment Board will have the ability to create specific rules, definitions, and procedures for identifying these careers to allow the list to remain as dynamic as possible without requiring annual legislation to update the identified list or fields. These methods identified by the State Workforce Investment Board may include region-specific careers, metrics used to determine what is high demand, as well as the procedure for requesting a field's addition or removal from the list. So the reason that we're doing this is because currently there's a little bit of confusion that we're just trying to clear up because there's several lists that may be considered high demand careers created by different agencies across state government, including but not limited to the technical college system, the Department of Education, and the Department of Labor. All very well intended, but this again will help to streamline and clarify that the State Workforce Investment Board will determine what this list is and how that list is changed. The current list that we have may be viewed as high demand career list include the Hope Career Grant list from the Governor's Office of Student Finance Commission, the High Demand Career Initiative Occupations List by the Technical College System, the High Demand Occupations List by WorkSource Atlanta and other regions. And I know Tim's here from the Metro Chamber, and he's going to speak to the support of the bill in a minute, but WorkSource is a part of the Metro Atlanta Chamber. Georgia's Hot Careers List by the Department of Labor. And then, of course, at our secondary institutions, our K-12 partners, approved CTAE career clusters and pathway courses that the Department of Education oversees. House Bill 982 will become the state's only recognized high-demand list. It will set that up, and it will remove this confusion shared by state agencies, industries, and individuals alike on what careers are deemed by the state as high demand. This bill builds on some work that was done over the summer by Senator Matt Brass and Representative Chairman Matt Brass and Chairman Matt Dubnik. SR 175's created the study committee on dual enrollment for highly skilled talent at younger ages. I know probably some of you served on that and were involved with that and can speak to that as well. And there were other entities involved with that study committee, the Metro Atlanta Chamber, as well as business and industry partners from around the state. And as a result of that study committee, each of those groups recognized the need for a consolidated high-demand career initiative and one list of the in-demand careers that the state of Georgia prioritizes for talent development. So, they determined, hey, this is a little bit of a challenge, and we think this needs to be addressed. The state of Georgia has done an excellent job in attracting business and other economic development opportunities. But in order to maintain our status as the #1 state to do business, we need to ensure that when those new jobs are available, that there is a well-trained workforce ready to fill the roles that our industry partners need. So the thought is, again, aligning our funds and efforts towards a universally accepted list of those high-demand careers is one important step in meeting that goal, and this legislation will help to accomplish it. So that's a little bit about the bill, and I'm certainly happy to walk through the different sections about it, Mr. Chairman. I know this is a hearing only today. I'll be back with you, and so we'll have time for questions today. We'll have time for questions, between now and the next opportunity that I have to present to you, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that we may have up to this point.
Representative, thank you, and I was going to go to him, but he's also pressed his button here. I think Chairman Perkle may compare and contrast with the 90-second explanation of a 24 bill with your 24-minute explanation of a 3-page bill. But I'm going to go to him and say, no, I'm kidding. It was a very good explanation. Chairman Perkle.
10-4. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would have to say that when you offered President Riley to introduce some more bills, I was a little put back because it was my bill that was before your committee this morning in Ways and Means. I'm just saying. So the question I have for you in regards to this bill, I know it's important. Workforce development is important. It's important that we know where the high career, high demand jobs that we fill those. Are you concerned that with a statewide board providing statewide policies for problems that often are regional? So there are issues so if I make, for example, painting technology that you do with, I don't know, with painting cars, there's a certain part of the state that there's going to be a run on those kind of people. And perhaps in Schley County, there's not going to be as much need for a painting technology person. And the concern I have is if we put all our eggs in one basket, and I understand the centralizations is kind of important in making sure we're addressing some statewide issues, but oftentimes workforce development is regional. It is local. And I want to make sure that in our effort to be more efficient, we're not cannibalizing some opportunities that we really need in some parts of the state. So, is that not true?
No, I thank you for the question, and that's a fair question. I know that's always a challenge with really vocational education. And our state has been a leader in vocational education since the inception of vocational education in the early 1900s. The first federal funding for public education was actually for vocational education. It started through the Smith-Hughes Act in 1917, and that was for legislators actually from our state. And so we've played a big role in this for a long time. There's always been a struggle between wanting to make sure that career pathways or skilled trades classes offered in local areas are aligned to workforce needs in that specific community, or realizing that students may eventually end up leaving that community, but we want to make sure that the programs are best aligned as possible. And so to answer your question, this will establish the ability for the Workforce Development Board to create a regional high-demand career where if it's something that is a big need in South Georgia, Southwest Georgia, and it's not necessarily a big need in Northwest Georgia, they'll have the authority to determine that and to create a high-demand career for just that specific region where that particular career is in demand. And so, right now we have a scenario where we have different players determining that, and so, again, this is going to streamline what's currently going on to improve that, but they still will have the flexibility to determine a local need if you had a local need that needed to be addressed.
Representative, let me see if I can help you. Can I go to your colleague there, Mark? Can you talk about the state workforce development board is attached with TCSG and would come from across the state?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
So maybe that can help us,
I think that's
and
the
then
point.
inform us between now and the second hearing to make sure Chairman Perkles, make sure it's local enough, right? I mean, I think what I'm hearing from Chairman Perkle is we didn't get smart when we got inside the Capitol building, but this board has worked in the past to do these things in their community,
Absolutely,
and would
Mr.
continue
Chairman.
to do so.
I'm just to be clear for everyone in the room, I'm here today because the State Workforce Board is administratively attached to the technical
Right.
college system. And so in that light, TCSG is fully in support of where this bill is going. We're also very happy that the list will live with the State Workforce Board for that being one of the very reasons. So Chairman Perkle, there's 19 local workforce boards across the state. And one of the ideas behind this bill is each one of those gets a chance, if needed, to define their regional needs and have those approved as part of a regional list too. So we've certainly already begun to contemplate that. I know that as the work goes forward, we'll make sure that opportunity stays out there, because you're absolutely right that those needs do change over the state. What we see from TCSG's standpoint and where we believe the State Workforce Board can really have some impact is we, along with other partners, and you'll probably hear that from some other folks here in a few minutes, have continued to get questions about what is a high demand career, and there's no ability right now to point to here's the list, whether it be statewide or regional. Nothing's been codified anywhere that gives us all the opportunity to say this is what we're going to do, and so this will allow for a statewide list, but also create the opportunity to have those regional lists if and when they need to be developed. So.
And that's my point, and I thank you for that. I want to make sure that if we're looking at a Venn diagram, we're not losing those in the middle. So that this list can be local. The concern I have, and we'll address it later, is where it says all state agencies and political subdivisions shall utilize this list to inform their use of federal and state programs. And it just appeared to be very centralized when you say shall and have a list, and that was the only concern. I thank you for the indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Let's keep. I'm gonna keep it short. We got another bill. We've got people we have to go. So
Okay.
we're gonna hear this. I think one of the things we might want to look at in there is when he says this list. I think what Chairman Perkle is hearing, and there might be some keys, is there's going to be a list. There's going to be a list, but it's going to have subsections for Southeast Georgia, Northwest Georgia, whatever. So it may just be a bit between the S. You know, if
Yeah.
it's lists, a list contains many sub-lists. It's just going to be in one place. There's not going to be one with the State Workforce Board and one with somebody else.
Correct.
There's going to be one place you can go to look.
To
but
inform and
Right.
not to mandate.
Right.
To inform.
So-
So you don't have to follow any of these necessarily. Ideally, I think it would be good for you to highly consider what this list will have on it, but you're not required to offer any one particular program over another one if you're a technical school, or even the pathways in our high schools. Is that fair to say, Mark?
It is, but I will tell you from a technical college system standpoint, if it's not a program that has demand, whether it be on the local level or state level, we're not going to offer it anyway. But having one place to point to a list where we can all, and lists, plural, if that's where we land with that one, is certainly part of what we contemplated too, to make sure we continue to meet those regional needs.
Thank you. Chairman Dubink waves. Representative Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Gamble, for bringing this. I appreciate anything that gives us a little bit more agility and comprehensive approach to identifying these high-demand careers. My question is for context, and I maybe should already know the answer. Who sits on the State Workforce Development Board? And I understand it being a piece of TCSG. Is that also where its accountability lies as far as what it's producing? Does that make sense?
Well, the State Workforce Investment Board is the is the entity that oversees the State Workforce Investment Act and those federal funds that we receive. Now, those members of that board, and Mark, you correct me if I'm wrong, those are appointees by the governor, and so that is how those individuals are selected. But they have a chair and they have meetings just like any other entity that we have in the state that's doing this type of work.
I have a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair. And understand they're appointed by the governor, and the governor has discretion in making sure which industries are represented, which areas of expertise are represented.
Right.
There are no other parameters for how folks are chosen other than appointment by the governor.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, Wendell Dallas, I know at one point was the chair. I don't know who is the chairman of our Workforce Investment Board.
I'm gonna hold on that one because we've had a change and I don't want to get out in front of the governor.
Well, here,
Thank you.
Never mind. We're gonna hold that back.
oh, there you go. And there we go.
I'm happy to say we do have
All right,
one, but I'm not gonna say a name out here
All right,
until the
here.
governor puts it out there.
It's all fun and games till somebody asks a hard question. So no, let me suggest this in the interest of time that as we move forward here, I think it would be good for this committee to hear a little bit more about the State Workforce Development Board. Not meaning this bill does or doesn't move based on that, but I think we'd invite that too. And I think there's some folks from the governor's staff that are here, and we just invite that as, again, not a command performance, but I think it would help inform and educate us, and we'd spread that along. There's probably a lot of people in the state of Georgia that really don't understand how they can engage further with that. So we'd invite them to come along with it. Representative Mr. Whip, Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I kind of wanted to piggyback off of Chairman Perkel's question because I thought that was that's what popped out in my mind as well. It makes a lot of good sense in terms of having a consolidated list, but the initial question that I had was, would that list determine what programs in our technical colleges would be eligible for the HOPE grant?
That's correct.
Okay. So
The high demand career grant.
correct.
Right, which pays 100% tuition for students that go into that specific high demand career.
So is there any concern if this language is mandating that only those programs under the HOPE grant would be per that list? Are there any concerns regarding different regional needs?
Well, that's what the Workforce Investment Board will determine is those regional needs and can align to this high demand career initiative so that those careers are able to be pursued with 100% coverage for the students that go into those careers. So and I'm wanting to make sure I understand your question. Yeah. The concern would be over.
So the language does not seem to allow for flexibility. So if there's a technical college in rural Georgia that may be limited in what programs it could provide, if they can't deviate from the list, the centralized consolidated list, I think I'd be concerned in terms of.
Yeah.
Help again with that, and then I'm going to mark the list is one list, but it wouldn't necessarily be centralized. There might be correct me if I'm wrong, but there might be something down in Southeast Georgia that's related to the new plants that are being built down there. There might be something in Northwest Georgia that might be related to the flooring and carpet industry. But they would be on the same list.
I would suggest that's absolutely right, Mr. Chairman, and it will not limit our local college if there is a local need in Sandersville, Georgia, that is an absolute local need that needs to be filled, and we need a specific program to meet that need. The fact that same program, Kalen Truck Mining, or whatever you might want to call it, if that's not a statewide need, our local college will still be able to offer that. And Representative Gamble alluded to it. This is a not necessarily an absolute in terms of, especially when it comes to HOPE Career Grant. And I don't want to speak for President Riley nor the governor's office, but I think this list will be for guidance. The governor's office and Georgia Student Finance will still be able to control which programs are specifically on the HOPE Career Grant list, which means they get additional dollars. So I think this is more of a place to point to the ones that we as a state, agree are high demand. But in terms of that program in particular, with the Hope Career Grant and how those dollars get allocated, that will still reside between the governor and Georgia Student of Finance to make that decision on which programs are on that particular piece of it. So.
A follow-up, if I may. So what you said, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I don't necessarily read that in the bill itself, specifically on lines 33 to 37, because it says, as the Chairman Perkle mentioned, funding is tied, right? And it's the word shall for any secondary, post-secondary adult education program, which I'm assuming is not just for colleges, technical colleges, but also for CTAE programs. And so as we proceed, I mean, perhaps additional clarification to ensure that the bill is actually encapsulating your intent would be helpful.
I'm going to go with, we're going to follow up on that, and I'll get with you offline to tell you a bit of an anecdotal story about why doing this dynamically and allowing them some the latitude to have it happen dynamically without it happening statutorily gives our educational institutions, both secondary and post-secondary, the ability, I think you used the word, to dynamic or to address it dynamically, or gives more agility to do that rather than to have to come back. So we'll flesh that out. Let's get a couple more questions here and keep us moving along, since this is our hearing. Representative Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the bill. I had one question. Since these are high demand jobs, how are you going to ensure that you have enough instructors? Because if it is high demand, that means that, are you going to pull people from different businesses to come in and do the classes to make sure that there are enough instructors?
Well, again, that will be up to the institutions to determine the need for the various programs that they offer that are considered high demand career. Mark, you probably want to speak to the HR situation at TCSG and kind of how y'all address that.
I mean, I don't see this bill impacting that and having that be a different challenge than what we have today with the high demand career. So we will continue the same process of as additions are added to that list. We'll work hard to find the instructors, whether it be from the academic side or needing to pull them in from industry. So that challenge will continue to be out there for us, and this just gives us a chance as a state to recognize what goes on that type of list. So I don't think that changes the dynamic from that standpoint, if that helps.
Can I ask one more question? So you're not going to necessarily be revving up to make sure that you have enough staff if this is high demand?
I would certainly say we rev up right now for every high demand career that we have around the state. So just to be clear on that we'll continue to rev up those programs as needed to meet that demand, and we're doing that with CDL and nursing and so many of our other programs that are high demand right now. Any additions that get added to the list will just fall right in that same category, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Gamble, for bringing the bill. Thank you, Chairman. I just have a quick question. Will the RESAs have input into the high demand careers, and tell me how that process would work?
So yes, and right now, the State Director for Career and Technical Education at the Department of Education, Dr. Barbara Walsh, she's not here today, but I know that she works with a lot of the RESA directors to provide input from them with career and technical education. So as the State Workforce Investment Board is going about their process to determine the list, they will be reaching out to business and industry, the education stakeholders, to get input and, again, to help guide them and advise them in the creation of this list. So absolutely, RESA directors would have the ability for input, and that is definitely a group that I would I know the Workforce Investment Board will be considering in the creation of this list.
Well, thank you so much, because they will be what we call boots on the ground for our regional needs.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Floor Leader Gamble, appreciate you bringing the bill. Obviously got a heart for the technical college system. Appreciate what you do. I would just offer up this thought as we're working through this bill, because I do think this is a a transfer of power from the legislature and statute to the governor's office. So if there's a possibility of having a conversation about making sure that the House and the Senate have representation on the board. I know Frank Ginn's on it, but if we can make sure that we have representation on that board, I think that would help. I think that would help a lot of people get their hands around it, because obviously we want to be able to have input into what's high demand just as much as the governor does.
I will relay that message, and I think that's certainly fair as we move forward with that.
Thank you. I like what you're doing, but I was going to go in the same direction that our representative was going into. It seems as if we need to have some kind of input as to who will be serving on these boards. That will help. I think it gives us a little bit more confidence in doing what you're trying to do. The other thing that I worry about, I hear a lot about technology now, and because there is so much going on in our states, there are jobs in our states, but I think that we also may not be in here, but you may look at how can we involve our colleges as a part of this when they were talking about people, do you have the correct teachers, do you have this, and do you have that? I think that's where colleges can come together with the technical side to do some of the I don't want to use that word because it may get misused, to see some kind of connectivity with our students, because we have so many of our young people today that need to know how to interpret, how to read, how to write, how to do numbers and all of that. So I didn't know whether or not y'all had looked into, what can we do to do that? And because surely our colleges are out there and they're in these areas where you'll be looking to put the programs, or you'll be doing the programs, and they can work hand in hand.
Absolutely. And, let me be clear that as the State Workforce Investment Board establishes this and is in that process, should this legislation pass, that they would certainly want and need that input from whether you're a technical college president, whether you're a local CTAE director, whether you're a business and industry partner. And I know we've talked a lot about the government side of this list, but certainly that business and industry part is going to be first and foremost as well. And so they are going to have that ability to depend and lean on the input from all of those stakeholders so that the list is right. Because right now we have a lot of different lists, and it's a little bit messy, and we're just trying to make one central list so it's just easy and clear and everybody's on the same page.
Chairman Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think after 38 hours of committee meetings, study committee meetings, and a couple thousand. I know, I did wave. I just think it might be important for me to try to offer some context, given some of the questions that have been asked by the committee, which are all very fair and very valid. Mr. Walker can speak to how the language of the bill accomplishes those things, but I'm just going to try to give a very quick 30 seconds of what a couple thousand miles and a couple of days of your life will do. To the point of the bill, y'all, years ago, coming out of the recession, we literally named specific career and career fields that we deemed to be high demand. There's your list. Lots of people have lists. Our colleges and our universities have lists. Our TCSG institutions have lists. This legislature has lists. We could go on and on about lists. There was representation on that study committee from everybody from half the people in this room, so USG and TCSG and student finance, and there were DOE representatives, there were economic development representatives, and the point was, again, I'm not speaking to the specifics of how the bill accomplishes that, but the purpose was we have a lot of lists, but we don't have the list. And so we're telling folks like TCSG and President Riley, hey, y'all just go figure this out. It sounds good. And, Chairman Carpenter in Northwest Georgia, they've got a thriving carpet industry. You come to God's country in Hall County, and we want to talk to you about poultry. right? Those lists have to be regional, but we don't have even the list. And so the purpose is it's hard to talk to parents, it's hard to talk to counselors, it's hard to talk to students. We could go on and on. Y'all get the point. I'm not going to belabor it. About what could be considered high demand. And if you were to see some of these careers, some of these jobs, some of these degrees, and some of these salaries, your view of high demand will change in a dadgum hurry. But where do you, as a legislator, go to get that list? So again, I'm not going to speak to the language of the bill. I've never been a policy wonk. We'll get it right. We'll get it done. But for members of the committee, I think the context of that study committee, there were only 5 recommendations, really 4, and this was one of them. We have to identify so that we can quantify, and Whip Park, to your point, and fund, right? How do we fund and put dollars behind legislative intent? So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for indulging me.
Representative Stinson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your work on this legislation. And this is a very important work. But I just want to, on a serious note, just for the purpose of conversation, just bring something to the table to add to all the good things that's been said thus far. As I read line 21, and it talks about the development board shall develop and approve a high demand career list that shall identify those careers most critical to the state's current and future workforce needs. And so I would ask that as you consider the current and future workforce needs, please take into account the funeral industry. And I'm serious when I say that. We are, especially in rural Georgia, in the funeral industry, we really need more funeral directors and licensed embalmers. And I'm serious when I say that. So I ask that you please just consider looking into that industry as you're doing the work for this great legislation. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think the lady, and we're gonna, we don't have any further questions. We'll limit that and go to the speakers. But I think the lady brings up a good question. I mean, a good point. Sometimes a high demand career field is we need 10,000 of these and we only have 5, so we need 5,000. Sometimes there's a high demand career field. We need 100 and we only got 10. We need 90. That's a high demand if you got to have them. So good point there. If you guys want to stay seated, I'll go. I have Tim from the Atlanta, please. Atlanta Metro Chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tim Carroll. I'm Senior Director for Talent Development at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. And on behalf of our investors, I want to offer our full-throated support for this bill. Thank the sponsor and the governor's office for leading on this. Especially love the inclusion of regional economic data being included in this. This is something our investors have been asking for some time, along with a consolidated list. So we appreciate your consideration of this bill, and thank you.
Thank you. I have no further speakers on this, and given the hour, we're beginning to lose members, so this being the first hearing, I'm going to wind us down at that. And if others want to speak, if there are changes, I'll allow that again at our second hearing. So with that, I think you've heard a couple of things that we'll continue to work on, and we'll work with you in the governor's office. And Chairman Dubnik, I think he had to step away, but he brings good points to their deliberation. Thank you much, and we'll move on now to House Bill 970. Is that 970? Chairman Dickey. For the record, the governor's floor leader used up most of your time, so.
That just means we got to be a quick yes on this thing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Glad we got that out of the way. I hope I don't have as many questions, but thank you, committee, for.
Well, if you don't mind, let me interrupt you. The gentleman's bringing back a proposition that we passed. The large portion of this passed last year, and then you have a little bit of additional information for us on that. So you two are bringing back something that we've seen before.
You're correct, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 970. Prior, you heard parts of this bill. where we talked about adding, but this bill's actually still talking completely about reach, and I just want to remind the committee I've got a real passion for this scholarship program. It's been around, created by Governor Deal probably about 8 or 10 years ago, and I'm very involved with it in my communities. The counties I represent, I go to the signing ceremonies. I know many of you do, and it's just a great program. It's not a big program. It's small. It's about $6 million, a little over in the budget. It's been that way really from the inception almost, and but it's in each and every one of our school systems. And I'll walk through the bill a little bit and explain it to you if you do it. But I just want to thank President Riley behind me for really working on this. It's over in her student government finance, and she supervises this, and I've been working with the governor's office also just to make sure we maintain this program and maintain the funding for our REACH scholars, and so this bill just makes some changes. It really streamlines it and simplifies this bill. It's a partnership. The scholarship is a partnership between the state and our local school systems, and that's where the funding has traditionally always come from. And we're making some changes that really benefit our local school systems, and you'll see that in a little bit. But in line 9, that's what REACH stands for, Realizing Educational Achievement Can Happen. But a great moniker there for that. The governor's office last year, and this is what you heard, Mr. Chairman, I think we added victim of human trafficking. First Lady really wanted to make sure, highlight that, and those students, it should, hopefully it would be very, very few of them, but make sure they would be considered, or highly considered, if the opportunity arose for them for the program. So going over to Section 2, these students are identified in the spring of their 7th grade, or really 8th grade year. We have these signing ceremonies in the fall, and I really appreciate our schools having a really good big signing ceremony. It's an important thing for the families and really the entire grade in school. Those students, you get a lot of publicity from sports signing ceremonies, but this is just as big of some of these families when they see their 8th grader there getting a $10,000 scholarship. I've seen it. It just really lifts the family and those students. I've seen parents crying and students just so thankful. And most of these students, families, parents have never been to college, and you see the identifying eligibility for this scholarship. These students, you just don't get the scholarship, you have to earn it. These students are identified application process by the school system and local businesses and involved citizens, and these students get identified in 8th grade, but they have to earn and keep this throughout their high school career. And and you can see line 26 that live in a family unit with SNAP benefits, homeless or foster or migrant or parents. I've seen, as I said, most of these parents had never been to college, so it really puts these students on a trajectory of more higher learning after high school, and that's the whole intent, just to change the dynamics of that student, that family, to achieve, reach for a higher level of education. And one of the other great parts about this, these students are paired with a mentor to carry them through high school, to make sure they stay on their academic trajectory. And these are not all A students. These are really average students in a lot of cases, but have to have good behavior, and make sure they're later on they're applying for other scholarships in their junior year for college or technical school, and good attendance at school and discipline, as I said. So it's not. We do have some that end up dropping out of the program, as well. But if they stay with it, it really has those great opportunities for these students down the. In Section 3 is where we really changed up a lot, Mr. Chairman. We were having real issues on our local level, raising the matching funds. And if you look on the last page, you see we use these tiers that the Department of Economic Development and DCA uses, and so we had different levels of community funding that had to come up on some of our counties, and anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, and a lot of our school systems, just to be honest, they're not used to trying to raise money for a scholarship that was going to be used for their students that actually leaving their system. They're trying to raise money for football, for band, for music, all those type things, and so a lot of times that was a real struggle I saw in some of our lesser populated counties. So this bill puts it a straight $1,000 per student for the local match, which I really insisted that local systems have skin in the game with these students, and so that was it. And then we're going to use the other $9,000 remaining from state revenues, and so the governor's office happy with that. Chairman Riley has really worked and done a great job with the finances of this. We had a foundation, and so that is what this bill does.
Okay.
Just make sure this program stays intact, stays going. I'd love to have some more revenue for it, and hopefully in the future we can convince ourselves that we could fund it at a little bit higher level. But that's what this bill does.
Yeah, I'm going to get you to questions since we are the first hearing. I think you've got, this goes back to one of those zoning times when the zoning attorney said, I think you might have a winner here if we can move on. But yeah, so you've basically simplified the implementation of a good program. We got a couple of questions here, and I'm finding myself up against a hard stop here at 3 o'clock that we're not going to make, but we're going to do the best we can. Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Dickey. I've attended several of these ceremonies in Clayton County, and you're right, they really do appreciate them. I just have a problem being a retired educator of putting this qualifier of victim of human trafficking in the bill.
Representative Burnell, it's an addition. It's not, you don't have to be a victim. It gives, if somebody happens to be.
No, I understand that part. I just have a problem with that even being in there because I don't know, how do you identify that person? I mean, that's like a label. That's the only problem I have. I mean, I think it's a great bill, but I just be a victim.
Well, it was put in there at a request of the governor's office.
Yeah,
I just have a problem with that. I'm really sensitive about kids. It's just like if I go and visit a school, I'll ask them. I don't just take pictures, or if I do, it's only of me and it's above their heads. I'm just really sensitive to children about that kind of stuff.
I agree with you, and as I said, these students would fill out a confidential application for this scholarship, and I would think that small committee on a local level might want to. The thought, I think, was let that committee consider that criteria as something that would prompt giving that student an extra leg up with this scholarship to be able to. Those students or those young people really have been through a lot and trying to get every extra help.
Well, I don't want them not to get it. I just didn't, but it's okay.
Yeah, I understand the ladies thing. We can investigate that further. Whip Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I share Representative Brunel's point. I think, yes, we want to ensure victims of human trafficking receive all the help that they can receive. I think the concern is just how are we going to protect that information? How are we going to ensure confidentiality of the students and things of that nature? The other point I wanted to make, I saw the tiers being striked out, in which I thought that was good to ensure that especially local school systems, small counties would be eligible to receive this. Is there any concern that, you know, some of the larger counties may end up taking everything? And I come from Gwinnett County, the largest school system in Georgia, but especially when it comes to scholarships of this, I want to ensure that it's available for as many of our local rural counties as well.
Yes, and to be honest, a lot of our smaller counties benefit just more than the larger counties. We're Gwinnett, I don't know how many middle schools, high schools it has, but a lot of my local rules have one. You have multiple, and so we don't have enough funds for every school. This program has been in every school system, so that's how it kind of evens out. I do not foresee, Chairman Riley, we do kind of take out limits. I don't know what sort of limits per system.
Let me repeat that because she's not minded. The school system can have a specific number from each number, so it's not the fact that you could afford a lot, you get a lot more. It's you're allocated a certain number.
Okay. And follow up if
Yes,
I
sir.
may. So the authority on line 53, that's y'all. Thank you so much.
Representative Stinson.
Yes, I think my question may have been answered already, but I still ask to make sure. And thank you, Chairman Dickey, for your work on REACH. And you're right, it's a wonderful program, and I enjoy going to those REACH signing ceremonies. But I've also been really concerned, too, about how these small rural communities can maintain this program for future students because, you know, the amount of money that has to be raised. Has there ever been any consideration maybe for appropriations toward REACH in further?
Thank you. That's a great question, but I think what we've done is drop it to 1,000. So that is a lot less than any of these systems. A lot of these small systems, or any county, the tier system would change year to year. So they were sometimes unsure how much they were going to have to raise. But this 1,000 would be a rollback for every one of them. So, you know, I think, for instance, maybe 1 or 2 of your counties were having to come prior to, if this past year, 2,000 or maybe 3,000 per student. So I think still trying to keep the skin of the game that I mentioned, them doing that, I think it's important. So I think the $1,000 on a local level is a good number. And
Okay. I just, the program lasts for years to come, so thank you.
Representative Glaze.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey. Appreciate this great program that you are expanding. We love REACH. I've been on that REACH committee for Fulton County for several years and had the pleasure of looking through applications. And these young people who we'll call middle tier students with great aspirations are really, really supported in this. I do want to just ask about if we could be real specific about how we're going to have the confidentiality of the additional student inside of human trafficking. The question, too, is there's a school in Fulton County, I won't name it, but it actually is a charter school, and all of those students that are in that school are victims of human trafficking. Wow. And so I would like to know how that school then would be incorporated into Fulton County to be able to utilize the REACH dollars, particularly that the most of the girls in the program are 8th grade already and above. So I would like to see how some charter school that really does focus, we probably don't have many around the state, but how we could incorporate those young ladies. Again, it is in Fulton County, so I can have some more specific information to you about that school, but every one of them are victims of human trafficking, and would like to see how they could be incorporated, just because they are not 7th grade when they come into the program. They're 8th grade and above. Last but not least, I do want to ask, do we see any additional funding where we could possibly use HOPE dollars to fund a program like this? Just a question.
I don't think the law will allow you to lose HOPE dollars now, President Riley. It's this reach is all out of general appropriations, and HOPE is tied to lottery money.
Yep.
So it would take legislation to do that. And by the way, great job on lawmakers last night.
All right, I'm gonna wind this up. We have one more. Dr. Clark, if you can be brief, I'm past. I said 3. It was 2. My hard stop is I've got people waiting. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to thank you, Chairman Dickey, for this great legislation. Really quickly, human trafficking and sex trafficking are not necessarily the same thing. Our people who have been sex trafficked, which I know it sounds crazy to think that people as young as 8th grade would fall under that definition, but there are people. Is this defined? So when we're talking about human trafficking, does that include sex trafficking, or is this just people who are being exploited for work or things like that?
Great question. I don't have an answer, but we will certainly, Dave, I've heard the questions, and great question.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. With that, if anybody came to speak to this and has a burning urge, I'll ask somebody. I'll ask one of our officers to take. But I am going to have to step away. You've been kind to sit through that. If somebody needs to speak to it today, otherwise I will allow public comment on its next hearing, and we'll bring it forward for that. Okay. Thank you very much. If there's no further action before the committee, we'll stand adjourned without objection. And without objection.